just making sure that everyone can join us this evening. Now, I'm going to check the audio again just to make sure it is working. It appears that it is. So, um, I had an interesting week. I normally spend the first couple of minutes talking about how that went. Well, my daughter and I went to the grocery store, and I typically don't do this. I don't just let it get anything that she wants. Most of the time, she just gets food or something innocuous. This time, she says, I want you to get pink hair dye. So I'm like, all this, I've always wanted pink hair, like always wanted pink hair. So my daughter says to me, I'm buying this pink hair dye and you can't stop me. So she calls my husband and then makes sure that my husband knows that she's doing it. And he goes, she can do whatever she wants with her hair. Your mother can do whatever she wants. Um, so next week I'm probably going to have pink hair. I lost the debate with my children and my husband, but I think that because I've always wanted the pink hair, I'm not too sad about losing to the children and my husband. Um, because I do need to cover the grey. It's got to go somewhere. That's just how my crazy week was. What turned out to be a normal week turns into me probably having pink hair next week. So stay tuned for that one. We'll see how that one plays out. Okay. So in politics world, there was a lot going on. Although you wouldn't notice it with the media still. They're still playing catch up and pretending like the Queen's death is still the most consuming thing in their world. Which it's sad, yes, but there are other things going on in the universe. So, um, with that, let's kick it off to uh what's going on with the journos, because I've been watching it and I've been thinking, that looks weird, right? It's not just the Queen stuff, it's who they're deciding to interview. So, for instance, this weekend, if you watched Insiders, you'll notice that they didn't get anyone that's actually the government of the day or an independent, one of the teals, or even a green. No, they're sticking hardcore with, let's just interview a Liberal that lost part of 20 seats. That seems part of a relevant thing to do this week, and just go with it. We'll go with that. It's a weird concept that I'm trying to adapt to, that they haven't realised Labor won. And I've written to them several times. I don't think my letters are actually doing anything. I think I'm just another older person yelling into the wind, going, "What is wrong with you?" So, I need you to see exactly why I'm asking this question. Okay, so it starts off with a Phil Curry moment, which he lives in a different world to the rest of us. Now, the setup for this is, I thought, hey, how bad can it possibly be? You know, that he's not that unusual of a character, is he? And then I actually seen the stupid thing that he said. And I'm like, yeah, no, there is something wrong with our media. I know Phil Curry is a very big Liberal supporter, but the facts have to be borne out at some point. Like, they can't just whole cloth make stuff up. So that puts it into the send up of how ridiculous this whole thing is.
Treasurer, you're talking about this $50 million better unexpected result last year as some sort of, you use it as sort of creating a problem for you in the next financial year. Can you give us an example of how that's creating a headache for the ERC in the current budget? Was it the situation that the budget was close to surplus at the time of the last election, giving that improvement in the bottom line?
Why are they claiming that the budget was close to a surplus? Where did they get this idea? Because the Liberal government kept claiming that they were getting it back in the black, and then when we seen the books, we're like, no, that's like $1 trillion debt. What's wrong with you? You're very, very wrong. We shouldn't even be talking to you about this. this weird moment that we're having with them still, the massive denial where the facts can't even be heard. I'm so frustrated. I don't know where to go with it.
No, even with an almost $50 billion improvement in last year's budget, the deficit will still be a little bit north of $30 billion. No, I don't think it would have been close. I'm happy to think more about that, Phil. In relation to the examples about how spending, which was promised but not delivered, has become a challenge for subsequent years, if you think about the $20 billion in cash payments that didn't get out the door, there were delays in procurement of COVID-19 vaccines and PPE. That might be almost $3 billion. Health and NDIS services, almost $1.5 billion. Some of the assistance to the states. Another big factor here was delays in road transport and rail transport spending. That might.
So what Jim is doing here, he's basically sending it up as, hey, hold on. The Liberals defunded loads and loads of stuff. ALP's here, we're going to have to fix this. And this weird moment where you think that you've got this, I don't know, where he doesn't know the difference in the figures or understand how a surplus actually works. See, they can still steal John Key's message from New Zealand, the back in the black, but they don't actually ever have to prove anything. The Liberals say it once, and suddenly that's like a gold thing to do, and they will just repeat it. And so Jim here is setting it up for, oh, hold on, no, we're still going to be behind. And yeah, they've promised big, but they were never actually going to deliver properly on anything. So we're here now, and we have to fix it.
Be $3.5 billion promised and not delivered. And obviously we go through each of these and work out what's a sensible way to reprofile. We have to work out which ones are going ahead and not. And so that doesn't necessarily translate directly into the immediate next year, but a big chunk of it inevitably will.
So that's, when you're watching, you're thinking, how does he get away with
$50 million
making that sort of... So... He makes out all the time like this is all going to be magically better because the Liberals did this amazing thing. If you watch Phil Curry, he repeatedly makes these mistakes. I don't know how there isn't like an ethical standard with journalism. I don't know whether we have anything like that in this country, but I'm about to get to another person who believes is a journalist. So, turns out the amazing cooker, Avi Yemeni, goes around and pretends that he is this awesome journalist. Only this time, people didn't even know who he was. And the reason we could call him a cooker is because he says the most ridiculous things about the vaccine and what it's supposed to do, and, you know, how he tried to self-fund a puddle when there were floods going on. I mean, he is a ridiculous character. So it's no shock to me when I have to say things like, hey, he's ridiculous. So what ends up happening here is, I've got to find it. Someone doesn't actually recognize him. He goes to a place and he's like, you know who I am, right? Oh, and the guy's like, no, why would I? And this is exactly what it is. It's this self-inflated ego of just a guy who got funded by another weirdo in Canada who thought freedom, I don't know, because of right side broadcasting in the US, Canada thought that they could replicate the same thing. Fun fact, right side broadcasting in America is a weird sort of thing, and that's in its own little ecosystem that is super bizarre. You can't replicate something like that with countries that have a real education system. It won't work. It turns into a joke. So listen to this.
It's a loose term for you, mate.
Okay. What's a journalist?
Not you.
Perfect. Now remember, Avi has a very, very bad history. He is an agitator. He deliberately goes around pretending like everyone is always against him. He's the perpetual victim in every scenario, said the man who hit his wife with a chopping board. Real thing. So if Avi wants to be a journalist of any kind, cool. Actually get the right credentials, be the right sort of human, and don't be a freaking agitator of the public. But I mean, look at the journalists that we have now. So let's go with that. The next one I want to go with is the idea of a self made millionaire, because this is a perpetual myth that keeps going around, that there's like this massive self made millionaire and you can really just be one. Um, when reality is that a lot of these self made millionaires got it through family money, and a lot of their money started out through some sort of help out, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think it's been purported the right way. Like they just did it on their own and they could have made it on their own. No, there's no way Trump could have made that on his own. He took millions of his dad's money, like millions, and squandered a lot of it. And he actually isn't as rich as what he purports to be. Same as many other millionaires. There's a couple like the My Pillow guy, who did similar things. But listen to this take on that. And I think that this is exactly why we need to think more critically about these claims of a self-made millionaire. Okay, hold on. Here we go. So, Elon Musk came from a family that owned an emerald mine in an apartheid South Africa. Bill Gates' mum helped Microsoft get a deal with IBM. Jeff Bezos' garage-based start was funded by $250,000 investment from his parents. Self-made billionaires are a myth. Now, this is something I agree with, because I don't really think that even with the best idea that you have out there, that you're really going to get the same money-making ideals as what these people did. You're not going to get the same startup and the same recognition. There's going to be a lot of help for you along the way, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got parents that can help you, awesome. But please don't purport yourself to be this self-made millionaire when loads of people made sure your position was made as solid what it is.
Self-made billionaires are a myth, just like unicorns. Of course, being self-made is a nice idea. It suggests that anybody can claw their way to the top if they're willing to work hard enough. It's what the American dream is all about. If Kylie Jenner can become a self-made billionaire at age 21, so can you and I. Even as wages stay stagnant and wealth inequality grows, it's a comfort to think that we're all simply one cosmetics company and some elbow grease away from fortune. Unfortunately, a nice idea is all it is. The origins of self-made billionaires are often depicted as a rags to riches rise to the top fueled by nothing but personal grit and the courage to take risks, like dropping out of college or starting a business in a garage. But in reality, the origins of many billionaires aren't so humble. They're more like riches to even more riches stories, rooted in upper middle class upbringings. How much risk did Bill Gates take on when his mother used her business connections to help Microsoft land a deal-making software for IBM? Elon Musk came from a wealthy family that owned an emerald mine in apartheid South Africa. Jeff Bezos' garage-based start was funded by a $250,000 investment from his parents. If your safety net to joining the billionaire class is remaining upper class, That's not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, nor is failing to pay your fair share of taxes along the way. Along with Musk and Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, George Soros, and Carl Icahn have all gotten away with paying zero federal income taxes some years. That's a big helping hand, courtesy of legal loopholes and American taxpayers who pick up the tab, all while our tax dollars subsidize the corporations owned by these so-called self-reliant entrepreneurs. Did you get a thank you card from any of them? I sure as hell didn't. Other common ways that billionaires build their coffers off the backs of others include paying garbage wages and subjecting workers to abusive labor conditions.
Yep.
But portraying themselves as rugged individuals who overcame poverty or did it on their own remains an effective propaganda tool for the ultra-wealthy, one that keeps workers from rising up collectively to demand fairer wages, and one that ultimately distracts from the role that billionaires play in fostering poverty in the first place. Billionaires say their success proves they can spend money more wisely and efficiently than the government. Yet they have no problem with government spending when it comes to receiving corporate subsidies. When arguing for even more tax breaks, they claim each dollar the government takes from them is a dollar less for their critical role in expanding prosperity for all Americans through job creation and philanthropy. Well, that's rubbish. 50 years of tax cuts for the wealthy have failed to trickle down. As a result of Trump's tax cuts, 2018 saw the 400 richest American families pay a lower tax rate than the middle class. And U.S. billionaire wealth grew by $2 trillion during the first 2 years of a pandemic that was economically catastrophic for just about everybody else. They want to have their cake and everyone else's cake and eat it too. Behind every 10-figure net worth is systemic inequality, inherited wealth, labor exploitation, tax loopholes, and government subsidies. To claim these fortunes are self-made is to perpetuate a myth that blames the wealth gap on the choices of everyday Americans. Billionaires are not made by rugged individuals. They're made by policy failures and a system that rewards wealth over work. Know the truth.
So let's address what we just seen. That was exactly the reason that I believe that the scales are being tipped too heavily for the rich, and nowhere near making anything equitable for the poor. And that's why I have an issue with the idea of a self-made millionaire. I do not believe that there is the same positioning that can be had in those instances for a lot of reasons, but I think that it ultimately proves out in the wash that it's rubbish. That this idea of a self-made millionaire can magically, be this wonderful, part of society. When you think about it, Jeff Bezos did one of the worst things you could do, and did deplorable conditions for his workers. Then he did something even worse. He, in America, they call them diapers. And what he did is he brought every company that he could see. He made sure that the cheapest company making them, he made sure that he made his price even cheaper. And then what he did was, once that cheapest company could no longer, because he was doing it below cost. See, because he wasn't paying his workers properly, wasn't paying an equitable amount of tax, and subsidies were just pouring in for him to do so. So then what he did was all the other diaper factories stopped, and he became the only one cornering the market. Now, the price is through the roof, and he's the only one making them. Now, if that's what a self-made millionaire or billionaire needs to do, it's pretty grubby. There should have been laws that protected that and say, No, you can't make it for below cost. That's wrong. You shouldn't be able to exploit the market that way. And the reason that you did it was pure greed, because you had the wealth and the capital to outlive every other company. So every other company died off. That's just one of many examples of how the rich get their own way in what is a formidable thing. It's the same thing when you have a rich person saying, "You can't say that about me." And it's not as if you can't say something bad about a person. There is a defamation and all that kind of thing. But if you say something that's truthful about something that's truthful, that it doesn't make the rich person look so nice. Something that Trump would do regularly is he would sue and sue and sue, and he would never actually win on his judgments. But what would end up happening is the poorer person that said this thing would run out of money, and then he would make him destitute. That is not equitable in the law of any kind. So they have many, many, many loopholes that we are not afforded just through purely being born into a rich family. Now, I have no issues with someone being born into a rich family. I have an issue with policy not being created to make it a more equitable system. So we really can run that running race of life all together on the same starting line. And I agree with Robert. We're never, ever, ever going to meet them at the same level on any day. But worse, we're not going to rise up and do anything because they've perpetuated this myth that they did it all on their own, that somehow we're all doing it wrong. You know, if you could tell someone that if you work really hard and that could really get you out of that jam, explain that to a mother that works 3 different jobs, single mother on her own, that still can't afford to pay the rent. Or say that to someone in a country that where you need to walk miles for water. The working hard part, it doesn't necessarily mean rags to riches for a lot of people in a lot of different countries. That's a very, very big myth, and I want to bust it now. It's an incredibly bad idea. But enough about that. I want to talk about the LNP. Now, Jane Hume has been doing the rounds and she did a horrendous interview this morning. But there are other times when they've been interviewing her. And here's the thing. I caught this through the week and I thought, when I looked at it, I thought, there's no freaking way that they're just going to let her keep going with this.
What we want to hear.
But they do. So, oh no, that might be the wrong one. I think I'm supposed to do, hold on one sec. There's 2 of her, and that might be, okay, so. Oh. I know. We'll do it this way.
This inheritance that Labor
found it. Now, I knew, because sometimes it pops and then, okay. So, this is the weird part where she goes on about this very, very uneducated moment of talking about all of this sort of stuff, of what they left.
This inheritance that Labor have received, they are going to squander on taxing and spending. At the moment, all we hear is Jim Chalmers coming out making these some grand announcements about a $50 billion surplus, which he will not attribute as an inheritance of the previous government. This inheritance that Labor have received, they are going to squander on taxing and spending.
She's living in a fantasy world about what that is. There's still a bucket load of debt. And any bonuses that Labor might incur, they came off the back of poor people. They came in the back of robo-debts and cutting funding to the states and, to the fiery services and to health and a whole bunch of other things. So if she's going to sit there and gloat about that, do you want to explain the nationwide ramping that we experienced during the Morrison government time? The nationwide ramping that is still going on now, because it all needs to be fixed up on a monetary level. Because, and this whole screw it, we're just going to let a virus do whatever it wants, and now Labor can't unwind any of it. It's a very terrible idea that Jane Hume runs around and pretends like she's got all the answers. But yeah, there's more on her. I'm not done with her yet. She was silly enough to put herself out there on national TV. And while I'm critical of the media continually interviewing the right, they do. Every day you see someone from the Liberal Party being interviewed, or Pauline Hanson, or one of the weirdos on that side of the fence. Every time I see it, I think, you couldn't have spoken to someone of the government of the day. Like, did you forget who won? No. But it kind of shows how the Liberals lost. Watch this, and it kind of just shows you where we're at. Okay. Here we go. Listen to this one.
What we want to hear from Labor is what they are going to do to help Australians with their immediate cost of living pressures right now.
But just to be clear on fuel, you support that temporary relief coming to an end?
Well, that was our policy when we were in government. Now the Labor government has taken the same decision. That's their decision to make. What we want to see is how the Labor government. That was our policy.
But you support it?
It was still our policy when we went to the election. We're not in government anymore, so it's their policy.
No, I'm asking what your view is though now.
It's strange because she doesn't think that you need to have a policy if you're not in government. Why? It's amazing that they only lost 20 seats. It's painful. It's painful. You have Dutton hiding wherever he is. You have these weird interviews that I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this because they're so freaking weird. But I'll continue. I'll torture you along with me.
Well, my view is that the government will make its decision. What it does need to do, though, is address those other cost of living pressures that are facing Australians.
Well, this is one of them. This is one of them. And I'm just asking you your position. You have positions on other things, like the age pension, for example. You've announced what the government should be doing there. So on fuel, should it come to an end?
Well, that was our policy.
But now?
And it is our policy. It was our policy. We don't have policies. We're in opposition. What we want to hear.
They don't have policies. They're in opposition. And she got out of bed this morning. But keep in mind, most interviews happen when typically the questions are given to them as like a preview of what they're going to be asked. And she thought, in this tiny little mind space, she thought, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say, we don't have policies, we're opposition. What? No, none of those things work. Pro tip, Liberals, if you are in opposition, you still need a policy, because at some point you could be the government of the day. So we're going to need to know what you want to go to an election with. That's how this thing works. And pro tip, don't do an interview and say that you don't have those things, because that's not how to get elected. You're going to lose more than 20 seats next time if you don't have any plan. And it's weird because I would constantly press a Liberal on what their policies were, and they kind of didn't have to answer it. Like when Bill Shorten was going up against Scott Morrison, for instance, he didn't have anything. They don't have an idea of what's really going on. And when you watch it, you're kind of like, that was weird. The media isn't really good at saying, this doesn't sound right. Why are you saying it like that? So I think this is going to be something that we're going to be dealing with them for a while. So we need to shake the media and then say, hey, if they're going to run as a definite opposition, for one, you've got to get rid of Dutton. He has to go. Peter Dutton has to go. Although he's a gift to us now, we do need a functioning opposition that can hold the government and the day to account. So let's say Labor isn't perfect. They do need a pushback at times, and it can't just come from us. We need an opposition that is able to have an articulate message that says, we will accept this or we won't accept that. It's kind of weird that we're in this position where we're talking about how the political space is moving, because now we're even talking about where Scott Morrison believes the government shouldn't really exist. He sort of believes in this whole no trust in government and all this kind of stuff. He was willing to get re-elected on that platform, which is super bizarre. Well, he didn't say it until after he lost office, but it was this really weird moment in Margaret Court's church that he was talking about stuff like this. I really need to hear more from Mr. Potato Head. And yes, you can laugh at me for calling him that, but he is ridiculous. Don't have policies, don't get... Yeah, if they don't have a policy, they should not be getting paid jack. That's it. And I'm not saying that because if my side was saying, hey, I don't have a plan for this, and it's not the minister in question, I would be angry. I'd be like, hey, why don't you have a plan for this? We need a plan. For instance, there has always been a carbon policy with Labor. There's always been like a policy around refugees and all this other stuff that hasn't thrilled me. And I've had to call them and go, no, I don't like that. And the stuff I do like the ICAC and a few other things, I've had to go, yeah, okay, this is workable. I can talk about that and it's productive. I think that this is going to be a problem, and I don't think that they're going to get as far as they want. But here's the next story I want to talk about. AFL has been rocked with a very big moment. And it's not one that I'm surprised about it, because when you think about it, they do have this tendency to do things that are, I want to say, it surprises me, but it shouldn't. So there's talk that a woman was forced to terminate a pregnancy. Well, she was asked to, and then as a result of that woman being asked to do that, when she fell pregnant later, 6 months later, after she'd had that child, she did end up terminating a pregnancy. They were splitting up Indigenous families. I will show you the article and we'll go through it together and we're going to understand exactly what the issue is. So Hawthorn is AFL. And I'm not a big sports person, but you can help me along the way in the comments, whatever I get wrong, because I did do a little bit of looking into it, of how it all works. And I can tell you this, I'm a newbie, so bear with me. But what I think happened here was the most egregious thing that... Can you imagine what it would have been like to get that call one day for any kid, particularly one in the First Nations background, in the Aboriginal community, that really worked to get to where they got. And they finally got that call that says, no, you're coming, kid. You're coming up to the big leagues. You're going to be with one of us. And the very first thing they do is scramble your whole life, tell you to break up with a partner, to not go on to have this baby, to, cut off contact with your friends and family, take out the SIM card from your phone and you can't contact anyone, and all the emails are gone through by the football company. Now, if these allegations pan out to be truth, after this has all came to light, which I wouldn't question a victim's story like this ever, because there's no way something like this can be made up out of thin air. It doesn't make sense. It's repugnant that this sort of thing even happened. Okay, Hawthorn Racism Review to allege that former coaches separated First Nations players from the families and demanded a pregnancy termination. Now, this was an external review, and the Hawthorn Football Club will reveal allegations that key figures at the AFL club demanded the separation of First Nations players from their partners and pressure one couple to terminate a pregnancy. Okay, so it's called a Do Better review. Now, this is going to be an important issue, because when we say do better, it's typically like a we can get through this. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you can just say, hey, do a bit better. No, I believe some things that are very ingrained like this, and I don't believe that you can just do better. I think that that's a myth that they create to tell themselves that, no, we can get better from this. No, dude, it's 2022. If we were going to get better, we were going to do it when we knew it was wrong to do it. And we've always known this is wrong to do it. You can't tell me that that they didn't know this is wrong to do it. At what point did they think, oh no, I'm just going to ask her to not have that baby? Oh, and FYI, you can't see that partner ever again. And we're going to keep you in a secluded environment where you can't talk to any friends or family from your past life. Now, if you know anything about the First Nations people, they are typically very ingrained with their families and their community and where they're born. It's more than just where they're born. They have a connection to the country, one that I think is beautiful and amazing, and something that I wish I had sort of gotten, but I moved around so much that I've never really had that moment where a place feels like ultimate home. I rent. So it's been a bit of a rough run like that. So I'm always a little bit envious of a community that can stay within its own grasping and live and learn about where they are. It's beautiful. One former player alleges he was urged by coaches and encouraged his partner to terminate their pregnancy for the sake of his career. Other players allege that coaches coerced them to remove a SIM card from their phone and insert a new one to cut them off from their partners. So, in all of that, what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think got the boot? Someone that is Indigenous. These people still sit around and pretend like they're totally fine to let this review go through. My bet is that this thing isn't going to be over. Not by a long shot. And I can bet you it's more than just this football company, because they all sort of mingle within each other, and you can't tell me that other ones haven't done stuff like this. What you will find is that there is a systemic thing going on, and there's going to be a big problem. So there's that. Next, I want to talk about cheaper childcare. Now, if you remember, ALP had this policy where they really, really do want to make childcare cheaper. Now, you have Jim Chalmers walking around talking about that. But I want to draw your attention to something he said which piqued my interest, that makes me think he's going to get it done. Okay. Here we go. Oh. Here we go. Got it. Okay. Cheaper childcare is a cost of living relief with an economic dividend. So this is more than just childcare. Understand that giving parents an opportunity at cheaper childcare is an economic boost. Think of it like this. There's a huge amount of the female population that mostly deals with childcare. And if you can get all these women to be able to, mostly women, to go back to work, and they're at ease about doing that, and they're not. What's currently happening is that the childcare cost is more than what that mum could earn. So it doesn't make economical sense to do it. So the government is taking a real approach to it and saying, "Hey, yeah, no, this needs fixing, and let's do something about that." Everyone is a winner from this policy. The economy is a winner, mums are a winner, the kids are a winner, because there is definite evidence that a child in an education system from 0 to 5 also has a better understanding from 5 onwards in that education system. Now, that doesn't work for every kid in every circumstance, but the huge majority of children, there is a lot of benefits to doing this. So I think it's a wonderful idea. So listen to what Jim says on it.
Cheaper childcare is cost of living relief with an economic dividend. And that's why I'm so pleased to work closely with Jason Clare and with Anne Ali to deliver this really important commitment from the Albanese Labor government. When I hand down the budget next month, cheaper childcare will be the biggest on-budget commitment that we make. And that's because we understand that the cost of childcare is the decisive element in the decision taken by new parents and especially new mums on whether or not they can work more and earn more. If we're serious about getting wages moving in this country, we've got to make it easier for people to earn more and work more if they want to. And that's what our cheaper childcare plan is all about.
Now, also keep in mind that birth rates are lower. We thought that the pandemic would increase the birth rates. That didn't happen. That's also another reason behind this, because birth rates are lower when you can't afford to have, say, said children. And that becomes an issue, because then you realize, I'm not saying that you should be paid this astronomical amount of money to have babies. I'm saying that on an economic front, it's almost a killer. And it stops a lot of people from going, why would I have children? I don't even earn enough to feed me. That's the issue. That's what I want to tackle. I want to be able to tackle that idea that having a child shouldn't send you broke to that level, to the point that you're, lining up at a food bank. Our wages are too low to be dealing with this stuff. So I think that we're going to have a dual policy in place where wages are actually in line with inflation. Okay, the next one. Now, I don't know how many people heard this, but it turns out that Victorian Liberals are a little bit upset with each other. Now, this is funny. It's funny, but it's not, because they're talking about very serious things like, I've always said that I do have a openly gay child, a wonderful human being. And to hear them talk about gay conversion therapy is heart-wrenching. I've always shared that my family is off limits, though. I don't bring them on any stream. You don't see them, and I don't mention their little names, because they have a right to that privacy. But from the mummy in me, oh my God, the things that the Victorian Liberals have promised is outrageous, and no wonder they're fighting about it. So, here we go. I will need to find that now. Okay. Oh, thought one of them opened up my Office store then. Okay. Here we go. Found it. StreamYard needs to work this out a little bit better on how they do this. Matthew Guy appointed James Newbury as Shadow Minister for Equality. In this role, Newberry sought to affirm the party's position on supporting the ban on gay conversion therapy. In response, Nationals leader Peter Walsh said James can go and listen to it all here. Now, he is going to say, so if you get offended by language or anything about this sort of language, yeah, I would mute it for 45 seconds because, yeah.
Thanks, Matthew. My assumption from this conversation is that the shadow cabinet process and the party room process no longer applies to any decisions we've made. That if a shadow minister changes, then they can put their own personal views on a policy irrespective of what's been through the processes of our two parties. I think we've totally lost their way. That just because James has been appointed the shadow doesn't give him the right to change history and put a very definite view that is counter to what's been agreed by our party processes. So from a Nationals point of view, we will not be supporting James on his position, and he can go and get fucked. Simple as that.
So Victorian Liberals are still in a world of trouble. They're never ever going to get over the line. Well, I don't think so. But don't get complacent about that, Victorians. Go out, turn out the vote, make sure Dean Andrews stays where he is, because these idiots are one DUI away from being an actual joke. And yeah, I'm making jokes about the fact that Matthew Guy has a history of a DUI. Unbelievable. These people are a joke, and I don't know how they ever got to the position that they did. My mascara is running, and that's terrible. Okay, so I now have a real funny for you, and then something serious. So just know that I do try and keep it funny. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna find it. Oh. Here we go. 2 minutes. Angus Taylor copped it tonight from both Mad as Hell and the writers in the audience. Check it out.
Who is going to be the next LNP Prime Minister? Obviously, it's not going to be Peter Dutton. But what about Angus Taylor? He looks the part. No. Hear me out. He does look the part, but does he have what it takes inside to reunite the party and lead a progressive coalition to victory? Well, the answer to this question can be found, I think, in how he handled this moment at his own press conference not that long ago.
Happy to take questions. All good? Perfect. Thank you very much.
In that moment between expecting questions and not receiving any at all, a little part of him died. And he remained masterfully unfazed. And it's this imperviousness to reality, this inability to adapt or even acknowledge what is happening.
Deputy Speaker, I don't need a Mr., a Mrs., a Madam. It's just Deputy Speaker.
I'll go with Deputy Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, meanwhile,
it's this complete lack of any wit and wherewithal to deal with any change of circumstances that will stand him in good stead should he ever choose to have a tilt at the Liberal leadership. But how does he do this? How does his brain work so as not to receive or process any new information? Well, consider this example where Angus is questioning why veterans are excluded from the recent pension increase.
why would we exclude veterans from this? It's extraordinary. And why Chisel and Dime, the nickel and dime, sorry, the age pensioners. And
veterans are included.
We cross now to the inside of Angus Taylor's head for an instant replay of that exact moment.
They've excluded veterans. Ram home that point, Mr. Ego.
Ramming home point, Captain.
Well, why exclude veterans?
Stuttering on rhetorical question, Captain.
Steady as we go, Mr. Witt.
Deploying hyperbole.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's another sign that they've got no hope of actually getting someone that can actually be leadership material. It doesn't take much for it to fall apart pretty quickly. So the next one I want to talk about, because of course they're still going to discuss the royals, and there's one here that I thought that you should see at how ridiculous the media is. Okay, so they don't quite know who they're dealing with, as they're dealing with the Queen's funeral, and they're trying to go through this thing of, okay, who have we got coming up next? And you're thinking, this is pretty boring. You know, they're just people walking into a door. And you think, no, they couldn't possibly be this stupid to just keep saying things. No, it's entirely what they are.
Who's this?
No, hard to identify. Maybe minor royals, members of the... I can't identify them at this point.
We can't spot everyone, unfortunately. They look like they could well be local dignitaries. It's hard to see. We're looking at the backs of their heads mostly.
But I think we are now getting to the pointy end, as they say, of I'm just told that was Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, in the distance that we could see hopping out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
They're ridiculous, and they don't even know who they're talking about. That's what makes this coverage of the Queen so crazy, is that they don't even know which person they're discussing. They're just like, hey, we're just going to dictate this whole thing from beginning to end. We're not going to get any signaling for who's, set to arrive or anything. We're just going to jump the gun here and do it. The next one I'm going to talk about is women's rights. Now, Nikki Haley is a Republican in America. Now, she was silly enough to catch my eye on this. She made a comment saying that she's pro women's rights, but you'll notice very, very much so that she's very much pro the Wade versus Roe being taken out, and a lot of other women's issues that she just absolutely fails. So when I seen her on this, I thought, oh my God, there's no level of irony that would even meet this moment. But it's not her that I want you to focus in on this moment. I brought her up because I seen her in the comments. Okay, so he is. Hold on. Here we go. These are protests are different. This is, I don't know why she's even doing this. This is Nikki Haley's take on it, which I don't know why Nikki Haley needs to have a take on this when she can't even deal with women's rights properly in her own damn country. My God, horrendous. And she got a lot of clapback for this comment. So, no. Anyway, these women are protesting because they are being forced to wear the full Najib garments. And a lot of Muslim clerics are being horrendous, violent even in some cases, and blaming women for their urges of wanting to attack women. So listen to, you're going to have to read the subtitles.
بگو دیگه جرأت داری بگو شهید دادید عکس از من بگیری چه بلایی سرت بیارم بله سرت کن کثافت به تو ربطی نداره به تو ربطی نداره به تو ربطی نداره به تو ربطی نداره تو برو گم شو بیادم حکم خدا سجاز باید کنید وظیفتون رعایت کنید شما اگر تو خونت بودی هر کاری دوست داشتی می‌تونستی خونم چیه آقا من تو کشور زندگی می‌کنم خونم همینجاست شما نمی‌تونی به من بگی اینجا باید بی حجاب باشه اونجا باید من هر چیزی دلم بخواد می‌خوام لباس بپوشم دوست ندارید حجاب اجباری داشته باشید تشریف ببرید با هم و خانم مسیح اینجا تو انگلیس زندگی کنید نمیتونم برم خارج از ایران. نمیتونم برم. دوست دارم تو مملکت خودم اینطوری باشم. دلم میخواد تو مملکت خودم آزاد زندگی کنم. تو حصار که نیستم. حق شما رو میخورم. این شما این که حق ما رو دارین میخورین. شما امثال شما دارین حق ما رو میخورین. ما حق شما رو نخوریم.
حرف نزن آقا، به تو چه ربطی داره؟ چی شدی؟ الان تحریک شدی؟ این همه آدم دارن خب
شما سعی کن نگاه نکنی با 4 تا مو تحریک نشی. شما اگه با 4 تا مو تحریک میشی بهتره بری جلو خودت نگه داری. فلاک 40 سال گوه کشیدین تو مملکت. جمع کنی خودتونو. باید وقت آخر کارتونه.
So I talk about this because I think women's rights are important no matter where you are. If you're in the US, if you're in Australia, if you're in Iran, I think that women's rights are super important. And I won't waver from where you're from at all. There was a lot of talk of saying, why would you be critiquing what they do? And it's like, well, I did the same thing in the US reverse Wade versus Roe. I did the same thing here when they were like trying to pretend like there was a debate to be had about same-sex marriage or anything else. Human rights are a human right, and it isn't a debatable thing. You should just hand people normal human rights. And however a woman wants to dress, she could be near naked in the street. It does not give you the right to harm that woman. It doesn't give you the right to do anything to that woman. And if you feel a certain way about what she's wearing, that's on you. You got to own it. It has nothing to do with what she's wearing. You do not, I'm tired of hearing this old age thing where, I know, it totally matters what she was wearing. No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And same as women's rights with abortions. It doesn't matter what she was doing. It doesn't matter whether it was a one-night stand thing or a planned pregnancy. It was her right to choose. And it doesn't matter what people do in their bedrooms. Telling people that two people that love each other who can't get married is weird. And why are you in their bedrooms? It's a weird concept that we have, that we think that we can be in people's business, where we have no business being. We should have the human rights addressed worldwide, like the basic understanding that we should have the right to live comfortably as we see fit, and the rights to our own opinions, thoughts, and feelings, even if we disagree with them. And that should be an international standard held by all countries. And if we can't agree on that basic fundamental thing, what are we doing? That people have a human right to decency. I'm appalled that we're still dragging our feet on how we treat women all around the world. And we won't get better until we start saying, enough. We're not going to do this. We're not going to treat minorities and women and children like they're not important. Like people in the LGBTIQA community aren't important either. That somehow that we've adopted this idea that human rights only matter when they violate yours. No, they matter when they violate anyone's. I cannot have children anymore. My husband got fixed after our last child. So I'm not in a position where it's going to matter to me if a woman needs a termination or not. Not going to faze me. I have no business telling that woman, hey, have you considered all your options? No, because it's not my body, it's not my business, and it's not my plan. Just because I made a decision about where my autonomy went doesn't mean that I get the right to make a decision because I'm a woman on any other woman's autonomy. It's the same thing of what happens with someone's relationship. Only if that person is in a domestic violence situation do I intervene and say, hey, this probably isn't healthy. Let's get you some help. It's one of those things that you really, really got to understand. We're living in a time where the thing that we walk past is the thing that we'll accept. And I'm not willing to walk by and have someone tell me that this is an acceptable way to live. That we're going to tell people what to wear and what to do and how they think that I should be. I believe that a lot of people spend too much time in everyone else's business rather than dealing in their own stuff. Okay, that's me. I hope everyone had a wonderful evening, and I want to say thank you for those who joined in, commented, and definitely give this a like, share it around, make sure people see it, and understand that I think that these are important topics. If you have a tip or want me to discuss something next week, my hair might be pink next time. So do keep in mind that there may be a very, very big pink sort of Steven Universe sort of look. If you haven't seen the cartoon, I can't explain it. It's weird either which way you slice it. But I have children, so I've seen a lot of things. Okay, thank you guys. Have a wonderful night. Bye.